Well, good morning, everybody. This is Bill Cloud, and this is On This Day. Today, it's the fourth day of the month Adar, and it was on this day in the year 68 AD that the Roman commander and soon-to-be emperor Vespasian occupied the city of Gedara on his march through the Galilee. This is recorded for us by the historian Josephus Flavius, who said this: Vespasian marched to the city of Gedara and took it upon the first onset, because he found it destitute of any considerable number of men grown up and fit for war. He came then into it and slew all the youth, the Romans having no mercy on any age whatsoever, and this was done out of the hatred they bore the nation. Vespasian had been sent by Nero, who was at that time emperor, to quell the uprising in Judea that had the year before inflicted quite a number of heavy losses upon the Roman occupiers. And so Vespasian was chosen because, although he was considered to be an able commander, his humble background and parentage was seen by Nero as an impediment to any political challenge that he might wish to pose, and that would be, of course, possible should he be successful in battle. So in 68 AD, Vespasian invaded Judea, first in the Galilee, but with the objective of moving toward Jerusalem. Now, that particular battle was interrupted, however, with the sudden death of Nero. And so this turn of events resulted in Vespasian returning to Rome, and in spite of Nero's political maneuvering, eventually finding himself crowned as emperor. However, he didn't forget about Jerusalem. He left his son Titus in command of the Roman armies there, and who did eventually march on and destroy Jerusalem and the temple in the year 70 AD. And so it was a man who was considered to be a political outsider by the Roman establishment, a man who thumbed his nose at the Roman Senate, and who, quite frankly, took pride in the fact that he was not part of that establishment, was chosen to be the most powerful man on earth in his day. He was also a man who was directly or indirectly chosen by God, apparently, to destroy Jerusalem and the temple there. The question is, did God choose him? There are many particulars in this story that highlight principles we see in Scripture. For instance, for Jerusalem anyway, trouble always seems to come from the north. Also, God often allows what we would never expect in order to bring about His will. In other words, no one expected the commoner Vespasian to become emperor, but apparently God had other plans. And then there's this to consider. Nero's death may have seemed, initially anyway, as if God was intervening on behalf of Jerusalem in order to spare it. However, as we see, it was only a delay in the inevitable, because Yeshua had already foretold of the destruction of the city and the temple. And so we come to understand that what God has determined, though it may be delayed, will eventually come to pass. Here's the purpose of this brief history lesson. It's to demonstrate how these same concepts can apply to our lives. First, when trouble comes, typically it's going to come from the same place it always has in times past. In other words, you and I have a tendency to allow the same issues to trip us up again and again. So that's something that we need to be aware of and that we need to be on guard against. Secondly, the very thing that men don't suspect as being an issue might be the very thing that God uses to bring about His will, many times to the chagrin of man's wisdom. And then finally, what God has determined to happen, even if it's destruction, there is no one and there is nothing that can stop it. But now, let's turn it over onto a more positive side. In the midst of our troubles, God always provides provision and safeguards for His people. In fact, the same area that produces trouble can be the same area from which deliverance comes. In His campaign to redeem His people, Yeshua, like Vespasian before him, or after him, I should say, began in the Galilee and ultimately set His sights on Jerusalem. In other words, Yeshua kind of sets the standard. He sets the pattern. He starts in the north and He moves toward Jerusalem. And it's His obedience to the Father and our trust in Him that makes it possible for the Creator to use the weakest among us to do the greatest exploits. He only asks that we humble ourselves and that we walk faithfully before Him. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, if God has promised something, though it may seem delayed or from our point of view, even sabotaged, it will come to pass. And so the lessons of history don't always have to speak to the negative aspects of life. They can demonstrate how the Creator wishes to use His people to be a positive influence on history. Though some are small, some contributions may be large. It really doesn't matter. It's whatever His purposes are. And so then, today, let us strive to be that positive influence that we can affect and impact someone's life in a very positive way. Because, ultimately, that's why you and I were created, to be a witness of God's goodness. And that brings us to the conclusion of today's devotion. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you tomorrow. Shalom.
Like what you're hearing? Become a Bill Cloud Premium Partner to watch or listen to hundreds of hours of teachings and resources on demand. Go to BillCloud.com/subscribe to start watching today.